another live broadcast with your boy Robert Kesakos on Football Tribe. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful morning. It's a beautiful and sunny morning out here. And yes, welcome back from all that midweek action right from Tuesday night on to yesterday. And then we do conclude that night when Chelsea do some beautiful results, many contrary to what we had predicted, including that Merseyside derby for which I had predicted a draw that ended in a Liverpool victory. Perhaps I'd ignored David Moyes' history that he had not won in 19 outings at Anfield. Well, his 20th was no different because Everton did fall to the sword of Jota, who scored the sole strike that turned out to be the match winner as Liverpool walked away with 3 points to restore their 4-point lead at the summit of the Premier League. That means that with that point gap, they only need to win 4 games and perhaps a draw to go on and actually they just need to win their 4 games to go on and be crowned Premier League champions, which I do think they will go on to do by any miracles. I mean, we are always prone to miracles, but I do not think this is the season that we will be expecting those miracles anyway, at least in my opinion. So 1-0, it finished. Key moments in the game, personally, for me, that offside against Beto, I didn't really understand that one at the time. Then Beto goes through and then hits the woodwork. That's the upright. I mean, that particular moment reminded me of last season when Tottenham Hotspurs was playing Man City, and I think Arsenal fans wanted Tottenham to go ahead up against Man City so that it would put Arsenal back into the title conversation. Not that we were out of it, but it was then in Man City's hands, so to speak, at the time. But had Tottenham won, the odds would have shifted into Arsenal's favor, but that did not pretty much happen. So the expectation, it was a similar scenario yesterday when you had that kind of experience when Beto goes on and hits the upright, and you're reminded of that one goalkeeper to beat moment that Tottenham Hotspur captain in Kim Sun had against I think Ederson Morales last season, and it kind of drove down a couple of shivers down the Arsenal spine. I would want to believe at least in yesterday's moment. So there was that, and then of course you do remember. Then the other key moment was James Tarkowski's potential red card in that what appeared to be a very dangerous tackle, I think, against Alexis McAllister. He went in really hard for that challenge. I thought unnecessarily because he won the ball well and clear because the ball was in 50-50, was in open space, but you can see, you could almost read off his face that there was a bit of intent to go ahead and catch the player, and his boot was quite high. So I thought he was quite very lucky that he went away with just a yellow card, because on another day, with another match day official, perhaps this could have been interpreted differently. Now, one other days when always the argument was, as long as the player wins the ball, as long as the player gets to the ball fast, the rest of the action doesn't matter. In recent times, that has shifted to say, yes, you won the ball, but what really happened beyond you getting the ball? And we've seen players get sent off for even much less in comparison to what we saw for James Tarkowski against Alexis McAllister on the day. So clearly, that in itself, I think he was very lucky. And I think I was reading a statistic yesterday that he's the player with the most yellow cards in the Premier League in recent times without having to be sent off, without being sent off. So clearly, it tells you the kind of player about. The very physical player, very energetic, and he wears that armband for the office in James Tarkowski. So I felt that moment was also another defining moment in the game. Of course, Dan Bickford on the other side had to follow a couple of steps to keep Everton into the game, and We all know it was 0-0 at halftime until that Diago Jota goal that was brilliantly scored. Now, in the build-up to the goal, there was a Liverpool player in an offside position. I do not seem to recall whether it was a McAllister or a Soboslai, but they were in an offside position. However, the goal scoring Diago Jota was never offside. That's without question. Now, there was a slight question of whether the player in the offside position does interfere with play in the build-up leading to that goal. I certainly did not think so, because I thought he stood still, literally. Does he obstruct an Everton defender in a way in trying to get to that ball? In my personal opinion, and not really, because I felt that the Everton players did not play to the whistle. They played to their own assessment of the situation, which was that there is a Liverpool player in an offside position. So in a split second or in a second, they kind of stood still and trying to call on the officials to, make a decision on the player in the offside position. Now, that is always wrong. I mean, I always get infuriated when players do that kind of thing, when they are literally officiating the game, when they are not clearly in charge. Whether there's been a handball, whether there's been a bad tackle, for as long as it's not dangerous and life-threatening, when there's an offside, play to the whistle. If you've not had the whistle, go ahead and, defend with all your energy, run after that opponent, run after that ball, do everything it takes to keep the ball out of the net, and then you can add your pace later. Because the thing that we've come to know about footballing decisions or sporting decisions in general is that once that ball hits the back of the net, it can go either way. The goal can be cancelled, it can be counted, and at the end of the day, if it's that goal that is not cancelled that ends up winning the game, then it will be 3 points the other side, and your argument whether you're wrong, because once the game is finished and it's, at the end of the 90 minutes, and the referee blows the final whistle, and it's 3 points, let's say to Liverpool, even when you were right in your argument, even when your pitch comes out to acknowledge that they made the wrong decision, you're never awarded any point. The 3 points do not come to you. The match is not replayed. So clearly, you ought to keep to play the whistle. Hi, Abdallah. Abdallah Ejazi. Hi, thank you for tuning to the broadcast. So you ought to play to the whistle, and I thought Everton players or defenders yesterday did not play to the whistle. They played to their own assessment of the situation, that there was a Liverpool player in an offside position and sort of stood static for a second, and then of course Diago Jota goes on to score what was a very beautiful goal. Then another situation that I did not understand was that clash between Darwin Núñez and Jordan Pickford. On first instance, I thought, oh my God, this could be a penalty. But what it turned out to be that Darwin Núñez brandished with a yellow card, which certainly did not agree with. At the end of it all, and tells the match official those 2 words of F off. So clearly, that bit, because when you look at the incident itself, it looks like Darwin Núñez gets to the ball first, but then I think he goes on to clash with Jordan Pickford. That's the Everton goalkeeper. But also, you remind yourself quickly that of how goalkeepers are severely protected in that in their box, in their area. Usually they get away with so much. Sometimes I do not agree with it, but they get the protection. Oftentimes it's justified, but there have been instances where you think, I think the goalkeeper went overboard here. For example, I certainly think that the goalkeeper went overboard in that in the FA Cup when I think Crystal Palace, was it against Prima? That incident and Joan Philippe Mateta to wear, a gear or a headgear on his ear because of the injury sustained in that particular moment. And yet the match day official, Michael Oliver, had not awarded the foul on that particular incident. Yet it was a straight red card. But anyway, that will be a story for another day. So it was 3 points on board at the end of the day for Liverpool, really putting them in a much stronger position to go ahead and win the Premier League title. Like I said, all they need in the remaining eight games is to win their 4 fixtures, and they will be crowned Premier League champions, because they have a very much superior goal difference up against in comparison to the second place Arsenal, who they also have to play in at least on in the season. Now, I think Liverpool would want to win the title before even meet Arsenal in that fixture. Anyway, moving forward, both did beat against. Moving forward, Ipswich Town did beat against Bournemouth by 2 goals to 1. That was a surprising result for me. I thought Bournemouth would carry the day. Then in the other fixture, Southampton did share the Spurs with Crystal Palace in a 1-1 draw, while Newcastle beat up against Brentford by 2 goals to 1. Brentford having, I think, a goal cancelled in that particular game with VAR, but Alexander Isak scoring to extend his personal tally to 20 Premier League goals this season. I think just 1 goal now behind, but Erling Haaland, who is out of action due to an ankle injury. So that moves the Swedish striker closer to Mo Salah, who did not score yesterday. I think Mo Salah is at 27 goals. And then Lisandro Tonali was the other on target for Newcastle to win them all the 3 points as they continued with that winning spirit, because their most recent game had been that Carabao Cup final in which they beat Liverpool by 2 goals to 1. If I'm not mistaken. Yes. So, of course, Brandon Mbeumo scored a penalty that turned out to be a concession on the day for this Brentford side. I think that also extends Brandon Mbeumo's personal tally to 16 Premier League goals this season. He's had a very wonderful season this season, this campaign, alongside his counterpart, Juan Visa, although Visa had some injury issues at some point in the season. But that was another beautiful result. Then the other expected victory was for Man City to beat up against Leicester City. Now, my prediction had been a 4-0 victory for Leicester, Man City to win. I did give Leicester any goal because they just do not score. They just do not score. I do not know what Ruud van Nistelrooy is getting wrong at Leicester City, but so many things are going wrong for him. So yesterday they did lose by 2 goals to 0. Jack Grealish scoring his first goal since, I think, April 2023. So he had not scored in what? In 16 months? Sorry, not since April, but since 2023. I think since 2023, he did not score the goal. That's Jack Grealish, a player on which Manchester City spent £100 million buying him from Aston Villa. Now, if the roles were reversed and he wasn't an English-born player, I think the conversation about him, or the media around him, the PR or the news around him, or the bashing would have been very much different. I mean, if it was a Nicolas Pepe, because I remember tweeting about that statistic and saying, imagine it had been Nicolas Pepe, because, I mean, at the end of the day, being signed for £72 million, brandished him as a flop for all his contribution, modest as you may look at it, but I do not remember him having a very bad spell as bad as that of Jack Grealish, who had. But anyway, he scored to give to Man City the lead, and then Omar Mamouche scored the other goal to win it 2-0 for Man City. I thought that goal for Omar Mamouche was basically Leicester, I think the goalkeeper, plays the ball in his path and scores into an empty net. Leicester City have not really done much in their own favor in regards to defend, in regards to the way they convert the future since they played on the other side. When I think that kind of over-reliance on Jamie Vardy has cost them, because we're talking about a player that has really aged, a player who lacks the pace that we know he used to have, and that game sharpness overall. So clearly, there's that. Then the other fixture we did witness Aston Villa beat up against Brighton by 3 goals to 0 in quite spectacular fashion. I did not expect that kind of scoreline or result for that matter. But again, once again, Marcus Rashford on the score sheet. This is after he scored a brace on the weekend as his side advanced to the semi-finals of the FA Cup when they knocked out, I think, Preston North End. So he goes on with his good form. He did score yesterday to open the scoring, while Marco Asensio came off the bench to double that lead. And then, of course, you had Daniel Malin score the other goal that was deep into stoppage time. I think after around the 99th minute of the game, that's when he does score that goal that put the icing on the cake as Aston walked away with all 3 points on the day. So beautiful results that we did expect, that we did witness. And then, like I said, match day 30 action does continue tonight when Chelsea entertain Tottenham Hotspurs. As far as what so far those itself. Liverpool, like I said, restored that 12-point lead, 73 points. Arsenal at 61. Then, of course, Nottingham Forest in third place at 57 points. You have Manchester City, who moved to fourth place, following that victory to 51 points, just 6 points behind Nottingham Forest. I think the biggest favor Nottingham Forest did for themselves was beating their direct opponent, Man City, in fight for this top 4 place. And then Newcastle, of course, who, by the way, do have a game in hand at 50 points there. So if they do win that game, the game in hand that they do have, they can go above Man City and move to 53 points. So Newcastle's chances of finishing in the top 4 are still quite very bright. But then also in contention is Chelsea, who are now in 6th place, who play Tottenham Hotspurs tonight. We all know that Tottenham Hotspurs are out of the conversation of this top 4 contention because they lie in 14th place with just 34 points, 3 points behind Manchester United, who lost to Nottingham Forest yesterday by a goal to nil, that goal by Anthony Elanga. So there's that. That's the good picture that I can paint for you on that side. Let's speak briefly Chelsea versus Tottenham Hotspur. Very, very big London derby game that you do expect in recent times. It has delivered us quite plenty of goals. The first leg ended 4-3. So that was the 7 goals galore in the first leg when Chelsea were beating up against Tottenham Hotspur by 4 goals to 3. The last season, Chelsea, I think, beat Tottenham Hotspur home and away, beating them by 2 goals to 0 and then beating them by 4 goals to 1. So Chelsea have won the last 3 fixtures in the last 5 meetings between these two sides. And then out of the last 5, there's been a draw, there's been 1 win for Tottenham Hotspur. So, however, the fixture in itself does come at a time when Chelsea are not having the best of form because they've won only 2 of their last 5 fixtures, and those victories came against Southampton, beating Southampton by 4 goals to 0, and then beating Leicester City by 4 to 0. While in that same spell or run of results, they did lose to Arsenal by 4 to 0. They lost to Aston Villa and I think to Brighton and Hove Albion in those last 5 fixtures. In comparison, on the other side, Tottenham are in no better form, although for them they've lost twice. They've won 2 and drawn 1. The draw coming up against Bournemouth. In that 2-all draw, they did lose to Fulham, who beat them by 2 goals to 0. And then their victory is coming up against Manchester United and I think against Ipswich Town, while the other loss was against Man City in that 1-0 loss. So in sheer comparison, in regards to the last 5, both teams are not in a very good position. So that then begs the question, how will things fare out? The advantage for both again is that they've welcomed back most of their injured players. Tottenham are looking much better. Guillermo Vicario is available. That's a goalkeeper. Vicky Van Deven, Christian Romero, Destin Udogi, Pedro Porro, of course, Dejan Spence. In that backline is available for Andy Postecoglou's selection. Yuri's Bissouma, Pape Matsa, James Matson, so on. Dijak Kulusevski wasn't out for this one, but Dominic Solanke, Brennan Johnson, all those players are available for Ange Postecoglou's selection. And when you look at that core of the team, you talk about a team that is capable of beating up against any Premier League opponent on a good day. And we're talking about a fixture that is going to be at home for Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. So that makes it a bit more difficult for Spurs, but it does not make it an impossible mountain to climb for Spurs. For Chelsea on the other side, of course, they missed Cole Palmer, who's been out of form in their last game when they were losing to Aston by goal to nil. Cole Palmer missed that game through injury and did miss the international break, so it does return for this particular one. And then you had Nicholas Jackson return from that hamstring injury, back in training, and will be available for selection. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's given the nod at the start, because Chelsea have really fallen short in their goal scoring process in recent times. Players like Jordan Sancho will have to step up. Moises Caicedo has been, I think, Chelsea's one of Chelsea's better players across the campaign. Of course, they missed Romeo Lavia to injury. Enzo Fernandez had stepped up. I think has about 6 assists or so. Then Cole Palmer, of course, needs to regain his form. Chelsea have to shine again. Then in the goalkeeping position, you do wonder whether it will be Robert Sanchez or Philippe Jefferson that gets started. You wait to see. But Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana, Trevor Chalobah, of course, Richie James, the captain, who in recent times has been being played in midfield for whatever reason. Enzo Maresca deems that so. And then Marco Cucurella at that left back position has been, I think, very good. He did score their own goal, I think, against Leicester City when they were beating them by 4-0. So you do expect that you do want those Chelsea players to step up. However, in the course of the week, after the international break, we did learn that Enzo Maresca had stormed out of training after his Chelsea side, I think, were beaten by Chelsea's under-21s by 3 goals to nil in a training match, and he was so furious. So clearly, you do expect motivations to come from there. Anyways, allow me to wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Give me your predictions down in the comment section. Bye-bye.